job leading us into this larger conversation, many of us here in Chicago and nationally, that of building more inclusive and diverse world. You know, to create the inclusive communities and corporate cultures that value diversity and inclusion, you know what, we must become the change that we want to see.
That's right.
And research shows that leaders are the ones who set the tone for that. But, you know, unfortunately, we have so far to go. But before the mayor and I talk about some potential solutions and strategies to really help drive and be more consistent and intentional about diversity and inclusion efforts from both public and private sectors, I want to dig in a little bit on the mayor's constitution about how diversity and inclusion has influenced her life in terms of work and leadership, starting all the way back from coming from a small town in Ohio to our beloved University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, to the University of Chicago as a law student, to being a young prosecutor, turned prominent partner at a major law firm, and now the first black female mayor of the third largest city.
Well, you know, look, coming from where I come from, I certainly didn't have in my mind's eye when I left my parents' home and went off to college that I was going to be the mayor of the third largest city. It wasn't even something that was in my conception. And really, a lot of the things that I've accomplished over the course of my life and my career were not something that I thought about because I didn't have access to people or opportunities that would have said, okay, this is a trajectory that you can reach. And I think that's exactly the point, right? You can't be something that you cannot see. And everywhere that I've gone, I've tried to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of me, really learn from my colleagues and particularly you know, people that were maybe 1 or 2 years more experienced than me in an environment, and then work with people who really cared about helping me expand my skill set. And when you think about diversity and inclusion, you've got to be intentional about it. It doesn't happen naturally. It just doesn't, unfortunately. You know, we like to work with people who we like, and many times it's people who look exactly like us. And particularly in the legal world, I know that if you're not intentional about thinking about building the pipeline, nurturing the pipeline, giving people opportunities, then it doesn't happen. You know, by the time that I left my firm, which has a history of having diverse leaders at the partnership level, whether it's women or people of color, I was one of the few African-American partners in the entire firm. And I don't say that as an indictment on my firm, which I love and served me well, but it's about you have to keep being intentional and creating opportunities, going and looking and hunting for talent. And the reality is, I know from my experience, I led our firm's diversity and inclusion committee for a number of years. You're competing for the same talent many times, and it's got to be something that you are offering, an opportunity that you're going to afford that sets you apart from somebody else. But then once you get people, the retention is, I think, in some ways the hardest part, particularly when you're talking about more senior people than more junior people. So it's that intentionality that really has to inform the work. I'm happy to say that if you look at our senior leadership team, what you're going to see is mostly women and mostly women of color. And that gives me great, great joy. Now, again, we were, of course, thoughtful and intentional about it, but I'm also happy to say that the people that are around the table that advise me on a day-to-day basis are best in class. I mean, they are absolute experts in every area that we touch. And that's great. And then they've, in turn, built very diverse teams as well. But it really starts with, do you value this? Do you see the reason for it? Why this having diverse talent and voices around the table is important? And if you do, then what do you do to actually walk the walk?
How has your background, Mayor, really helped you not be seen or as different? Like, how have you used a lot of your differences, or not necessarily difference, but the depth, you know, of your training, your education, your cultural experiences? How has that really helped sort of get you where you are today? Because I think this group here today would love to have a little insight in terms of, because we're in a field that is, you know, obviously very, very white, to be quite honest. And, you know, when you look at, you know, some of these folks in here, they are the future of how companies, how institutions really talk about who they truly are. And they are striving to be the face of these companies. So when you look at oftentimes, what is different about certain folks, particularly in this business, how can we use that as a strength versus a weakness?
Well, I mean, you all are going to form the narratives of the companies that you work for and the companies that you service, and really kind of understanding the value of the role that you're in. I mean, I'll say a couple things, I guess, in reaction to your question. I'm old enough that I came up at a time when there weren't a lot of women and people of color in rooms. Particularly when I was a young lawyer, I would tag along with the partners that I was with, but many times they were white men who I was fortunate enough that they saw something in me and they helped nurture me. But I'd go to meetings, and this is really pre-internet in many instances, maybe having talked to somebody on the phone, and then you'd see their eyes kind of get big and like, oh, I literally was you're taller than what I was expecting. Yeah, that's not true, but so I think it's important for us to really seize the opportunities. And when you are one of a few, people are going to look to you and like, what do you as a black woman, as a LGBTQ person, you're gonna be the example and the touchstone for people who are not necessarily diverse, and owning responsibility for that and recognizing how important it is for you to advocate and not view other people who look like you or have the same demographics as competition, but really you being at the table gives you an opportunity to open up the door wider for other people to come through. I think that is one of the most important things. And it's hard to feel that power and really seize that power, particularly when you're junior or mid-level. But you've got to be thinking about that. I say this all the time, particularly in groups of women who are talking about, well, what do you do? What's the ladder? We can't view each other as competition. If we do, we're all dead. We have to view any success that any of us has as success for the whole. And that we've got to then create ladders of opportunity for other people to ascend the ranks and maybe exceed what we have done.
Thank you, Mayor. You've been in a very unique situation where you've seen both the corporate side of dealing with this equation and also the public sector. Mm-hmm. Diversity is hard work. Mm-hmm. This is really, really hard work. And why do you think that we've not had consistent and success in driving diversity and inclusion efforts? And, is it not enough, attention, like you just said, or accountability from the top? Is it just lip service? Is it competing? There's so many diversity initiatives that can compete with each other. And also, unconscious bias and microaggressions, all of these things can play into this. But what can be strategically done to really start to show some momentum and progress in this area?
That's a great question. Let me kind of diagnose what I see as a challenge first. I think it comes from a couple of different things. Number one is making sure that we are creating a menu of options for young people to see themselves in jobs and businesses. And I think that's one of the things that I really take on as a responsibility as a mayor in a city. If young people don't see themselves in the future of the city, in the future of particular jobs or industry sectors, that's a huge problem, and we will not ever break through there. So I think that's part of it. Mm-hmm. I also think that, I grew up in relatively modest circumstances, and we didn't have a lot of money at all. We were a family that absolutely lived paycheck to paycheck, and we were one, financial burden away from crisis. But the one thing that my parents taught me, my mother in particular, was that nothing could actually hold me back. Not my race, not my gender, not our financial status. And from the time that I was really young, that was kind of a mantra in my house. My mother, the shorthand was, remember you're Ann Lightfoot's daughter. Now, when I was very young, I thought that meant don't go out and act a fool because I'm going to hold you accountable. And I'm sure it did mean that. But what it also meant was, both of my parents grew up in the segregated South. They were born in the 1920s. They labored under Jim Crow, and their whole lives were shaped by race and by their skin color. And so what my mother was also telling me was, and I've seen this, and you know this, too many of us take in all the victimization and the negativity that comes from being different, that comes from being diverse, rather than using it as an opportunity to propel ourselves forward. And the difference one of the other difference makers that I have seen over the course of my life is, do you believe that you have a right to have a seat at the table? Do you believe that you have a right to lead that table, that discussion? And if you don't think that, if you don't believe in yourself in that way, then you're never going to be successful. And it's easy, the roadblocks are everywhere, the landmines are everywhere. But if you believe and you want something in your heart, then you can get it and you can achieve it despite the odds. And that, I think, is something that we don't talk enough about. Because look, I've seen people, and particularly people of color will say, yeah, but they. Like, that's another of my mother's pet peeves. We weren't allowed to use the word they. Because when you talk about they won't let me, they did this to me, you are giving away your power and you're making somebody else control your destiny. I think that we all have to control our own destiny. And it's hard to do. Believe me, I bumped up against a lot of glass ceilings, a lot of walls, a lot of people who wouldn't give me the time of day, and frankly, not until recently, right? Just because I'm there doesn't mean that those hurdles don't exist in my life. They do. And I see them and I recognize them, but then I strategize about how to overcome them. And it's a constant battle. But you've got to be willing to be in the fight. Because if you're not, we can have all the great programs and initiatives that we want, but individuals have to believe that they have a right to be part of an institution, be part of a narrative. And that's critically important as well. We can't give up that fight.
Thank you, Mayor. Lastly, because I know we probably got about 5 more minutes, or 2 or 3, but I want to ask you, as mayor, what's your vision and strategy to help drive more inclusive and diverse communities in our city? And you've done a lot of work already off the back in terms of addressing some of the economic disparity with Southwest Invest. What does those challenges and opportunities look like? And also, how does that relationship look like to make this happen from a public and private partnership?
Well, look, first of all, for me, I talk about this issue everywhere I go. Equity and inclusion have to be part of the lifeblood and the DNA of our city. As I said, I grew up in very humble circumstances, and I see myself in neighborhoods across the city. I see young people who, but for the grace of God, I could have met. And so I want to do everything that I can to open up opportunity for them. The difference between me and them is that I had opportunities that I was able to take advantage of. You can have drive. You can be very charismatic. You can do well. But if you don't have those real opportunities to propel you beyond your current circumstances, it's not going to work. So I feel like one of my primary responsibilities as mayor is to do everything I can, not just to talk about the issues, but to really use the power of my office, use city resources, and then the power of the bully pulpit to create real and lasting opportunity in neighborhoods that have just been bereft of hope for way too long because the investments haven't been there. And we do that through making sure that we are creating safe and healthy communities. We do that by making sure that we extend the reach of neighborhood schools and education so that people really have the opportunity to connect up. But it's also just being present in neighborhoods. It's not a good thing that I continually still hear from people all across the city, and not just young people, but people who got gray hair like me. I've never seen a mayor in my neighborhood. I've never met a mayor in my life before. That doesn't give me pleasure. It doesn't make me feel like I'm this heroic person going out. What it says to me is I need to even do more. I need to even be more present because I want people to understand who we are, what we're trying to do, and it helps me to be out and present. And finally, I'll say, I want to make sure that we are doing a much better job to tell the incredible stories of people all across our city. Even in neighborhoods that are crime-plagued, that are economically stressed, you know this, there are unbelievable things happening. Neighbors are stepping up for each other in really profound ways, and it doesn't sell, right, in newspapers, But that is truly the story of Chicago. So telling those stories and making people see that whatever their life experience is reflected in what we're doing as a city to say this is why Chicago is great. So, Glenn and I have been talking for a while about how do we visualize and tell the story of Chicago to make it enticing for tourists. But part of it is also, how do we uplift our spirits ourselves? How do we sell the neighborhoods and people and residents in the city on why Chicago is great, why Chicago is the place that they should devote their lives and their fortune and their resources. Selling to our internal audience is every bit as important as selling to the external audience.
I couldn't agree wholeheartedly. And I want to take the time to say thank you to our mayor. We are lucky to have one of Chicago's most inspirational and influential leaders with us today during a very busy last 2 weeks. So thank you so much, Mayor. And the good news is Michigan doesn't play tomorrow, so we have a bye week. Tomorrow. So thank you, Mayor.
Please join me.